I'm your host, Sabrina Salvati. I'm your host, Sabrina Salvati. I'm your host, Sabrina Salvati. All right. Happy Monday, guys. Welcome to Sabs podcast. I'm your host, Sabrina Salvati. I have a special guest with me tonight. He is running for U.S. Senate through the Green Party, and he's from the state of North Carolina. Everyone, please give a huge welcome to Matthew Ho. Matthew, thank you so much for coming back.
Hey, Sabrina, thanks for having me here.
So, Matthew, I know you have some good news for us, but for people who are not aware, can you please explain to everyone what did the Democratic Party in North Carolina do after you received the required amount of signatures to get onto the ballot?
Right. So to get onto the ballot as a North Carolina Green Party, we had to go out and collect signatures. We did that. We exceeded by 160% the required number that we needed. We had those signatures validated. We met all the deadlines. We did everything procedurally correct. And after we turned them into the State Board of Elections to be certified, we were told that we were under investigation for fraud. And so we cooperated with the State Board of Elections. We knew that there was no fraud, but it was a delaying tactic. And at the very last day in June, the deadline was July 1st to be certified, to be put on the ballot. The State Board of Elections, in a 3-2 partisan decision, 3 Democrats versus 2 Republicans, voted to not certify us because there was the possibility of fraud. They then took another month to investigate. And in the meantime, we filed a lawsuit in federal court. And what happened is that this past week, the State Board of Elections met again, and they unanimously certified us. All Democrats, all Republicans voted for us, because after more than 2 months of an investigation into our fraud, or our supposed or alleged fraud, they weren't able to show anything because we didn't commit fraud. But for 2 months, they denied us a place on the ballot, and then they smeared us. They would say things, Sabrina, like there is a universe of fraud occurring here, or thousands of blatant forgeries, and without any evidence, without any merit. And so we had sued, but because the State Board of Elections certified us before we were able to have our hearing in court, that basically rendered our lawsuit moot. And then on Friday, the judge in our federal suit, he ruled and placed myself and the other Green Party candidate, Michael Trudeau, on the ballot for November because we had this July 1st deadline issue. This is what the Democrats did via the State Board of Elections. On a parallel front, the Democratic Party, not just the North Carolina Democratic Party, but the Democratic Senatorial Campaign Committee, Chuck Schumer's outfit, from the very get-go, from as soon as we turned our signatures on, they opposed us. They filed complaints against us. They sent people around impersonating Green Party and State Board of Elections officials on the phone and text, going to people's homes, trying to get people to remove their signatures. They were saying we had committed fraud, all these types of things in a coordinated effort between the Democratic Party and the State Board of Elections to keep us off the ballot. Why do I feel comfortable saying that? Because if you look who the head of both the North Carolina government is, as well as the head of the North Carolina Democratic Party, and someone whose name keeps being dropped for president in 2024, 2028, it's Roy Cooper, the Democratic governor of North Carolina. Just to make sure people understand why I'm so at ease criticizing Cooper in this manner. If people are following the story of the Democrats putting $45 million into Republican primaries to boost the worst of the Republicans, boost the Trumpers, the election deniers, those grotesque thugs who want to be in office, Roy Cooper's the head of the Democratic Governors Association, who has been putting that tens of millions of dollars into those races. So to think that Roy Cooper's hands are clean, I mean, come on. So we had a judge rule in our favor. We are now on the ballot. We are still facing, we still have some obstacles though, Sabrina, because the North Carolina Democratic Party has filed a state lawsuit to try and keep us off the ballot, to try and block us that way. And meanwhile, an appeal has been filed in federal court against the judge's decision that was issued on Friday. So we still have 2 lawsuits that we are contending with. But as of right now, myself and Michael Trudeau are on the ballot for the Green Party in November, and voters here in North Carolina have a choice for, an option to vote for someone who's for healthcare for all, who's for ending student debt, right? Who's in favor of annually adjusted living wages, who is in favor of rent control and banning corporations from buying homes. So we're in a good spot right now, but we're still in a fight. But it's a fight we're happy to have because we keep winning.
I have a question. I know I saw the video where Democrats from North Carolina were going to people's homes as well, too, asking them if they intended to sign. Like, obviously, obviously they did. Right. But I'm curious, do you know if the Republican Party in North Carolina was also doing that, or was it only the Democratic Party?
It was only the Democratic Party. If we were the Libertarians, they would have been doing that. That's for sure. I mean, it's just 2 sides of the same coin. I mean, that's the one of the things that makes the 2-party system so corrupt, so undemocratic, right? So harmful, is that anything one does, the other opposes. And that if one thinks, if the Republicans think there's a benefit to doing something, the Democrats will oppose it, and vice versa. So it really was just symptomatic of what we're fighting against, of why we're trying to create a multi-party democracy, why we're trying to bring about more parties, more independent candidates, more grassroots movement, giving voters choice, allowing voters to vote on issues, voting on their beliefs and principles, their conscience, and not participating in this identity politics, red versus blue, lesser of 2 evils type scheme that we've had for way too long.
And one thing I want to say, too, you hear oftentimes, I've heard this from Democrats and Republicans, that we shouldn't take third parties seriously or independent candidates seriously. But if they didn't consider them to be an issue, they wouldn't go to these lengths that they're going to right now to try to remove someone like Matthew. See, this is the thing. Like, they say that we need to protect our democracy per se, but everything that they're doing behind the scenes, and like Matthew, obviously, I'm not glad this happened to you. But I will say that because this happened to you, I think it's brought more attention to this, because I feel like a lot of people didn't realize this kind of thing was going on. So it's like they say they want a real democracy, but at the same time, behind the scenes, they're the ones undermining the so-called democracy that we have in this country today.
Well, this validates what we've been saying. This validates what you've been saying, Sabrina. This validates what people all throughout the country say and believe. There's a poll last year, 85% of Americans want major restructuring of our electoral system. They want that because they know it's not just broken, but it's corrupt. And it's harmful. It's hurting us. It's hurting our people. I mean, why did the Democrats not want us on the ballot? Why would the Republicans not want the Libertarians on the ballot or whoever? It's because we threaten their donors. Like, we are going to represent people who otherwise are not going to be represented this November. And we are going to represent them by pushing issues like single payer health insurance, by pushing, living wages, ending the war on drugs, real action on the climate. Right. I mean, those things are a threat to the profits of the donors that support both the Republicans and the Democrats. And that's why they want us off the ballot. That's why they don't want us participating. That's why they don't want voters to have a choice. They don't want that competition because we provide much better options.
That's right. And you also show them that it can be done on the grassroots level.
Right.
And that's something that they don't want people to see, that it can be done that way. I have a question in reference to other people that have run through the Green Party. Have you had a chance to talk to people like Jill Stein as well? Because I know Jill Stein at one point, I think she may still have this lawsuit, but I know at one point she had a lawsuit as well. Similar situation. I know she showed up to debate and they wouldn't let Jill Stein debate.
Oh, they basically locked her away in a warehouse. They arrested her and put her, incommunicado for the entire length of the debate. So she couldn't even tweet about it or do whatever. No, this was expected. Look, you wade into the alligator pond, you're going to get bit. We were expecting this. Were we expecting exactly what they did? I don't think so. But were they going to do everything they could to block us, to sabotage us? And there's probably things that they did that we are not aware of yet. And they're going to do more.
Right.
They're going to do everything they can up until November 8th to keep us out of the election. And we're confident too that after November 8th, they're still going to come after us and try and kick us off the ballot for 2024. They are desperate to protect what they have. They know they offer nothing to the voters. They know they offer nothing to our communities, that the only thing they can do is serve the interests of the corporations and the banks and the wealthy. And that's what they're going to protect. And so in Jill's case, Jill is being punished for having temerity to run in 2012 and 2016 and offer health care for all, right? Offer real solutions for working families that both parties don't want. And so she is being punished. She's being made an example of. I think in many ways that's what they hoped would happen here, that we would go through great lengths, exhaust ourselves, use up all our resources just to get on the ballot, because petitioning is so intensive. It takes up all your time, all your money, all your effort, all your attention. All you can do is just go out there and collect signatures. You can't really campaign for months. I mean, you're out there canvassing, but it's not exactly what you want to be doing. And then they hit us with these lawsuits. They hit us with the State Board of Elections, not certifying us and spreading rumors about us and allegations that were completely untrue, that we were committing fraud. You know, they do this to make an example of like, okay, you want to run against this. Well, how are you going to get through it all? Because we're going to throw everything we have, not just the resources of the Democratic Party, but the resources of the state. So that's what we were up against. And we were happy for the fight. This was the fight that we wanted. Would we have wanted things to go differently? Would we want to be in control of our campaign, set our own narrative? Absolutely. But look, I am happy to be fighting these Goliaths right now. We are in a David versus Goliath situation here against both the state and the Democratic Party. I'm happy to fight the Republican Party too, because to hell with them as well. You know, so but the idea that we are up against Leviathan here, that we are, if you go back, one of the things that influences me so much, and something that influenced me when I was a kid in high school reading it, was Martin Luther King's comment that compassion is not flipping a coin to a beggar, but it's tearing down the edifice that creates beggars. And that's what we're up against here. We're up against the edifice. And so we're excited for the fight. We're happy for the fight. It proves our point. It validates us. We've been vindicated over and over again. And we're going to keep fighting, and we're going to keep winning.
What do you say to people that say that third-party candidates can't win? And I ask this question because I can point out third-party candidates that have won, and then people will say, well, that's only on the local level. But I don't think we should discuss local politics as though it doesn't matter. I think local politics are very important. I'm actually going to be talking to a gentleman, Peter Schwartzman, actually just won a mayor race in Illinois, and he ran through the Green Party. Like, it's just, so I would tell people that, you know, Greens are winning on the local level. And the reason why I think they're not getting that same, I would say, energy on the national level is because of the things that they did to people like Jill Stein. The media smears them obviously very heavily, or they don't talk about them at all. So what do you say to people when they make that comment that third-party candidates can't win?
Well, I mean, the Green Party's won. We've had 1,000 wins in the last 20 years, I believe. We currently have about 135 of our people in elected office across the country. We do win on the local level. I mean, the thing that I think not going to surprise anyone is what you run into in terms of money. I mean, just the sheer volume of money and the way money controls our entire political process, including the elections, that's a real impediment when you start talking about not just statewide races, but even local state races, state Senate and state House races. And then, of course, when you start talking about congressional and state Senate, U.S. Senate and presidential races, you're talking about hundreds of millions of dollars, billions of dollars being involved. And, you know, you can't discount that. However, we have to approach this asymmetrically. We have to realize the strengths that we have. We have to realize that we have the moral advantage. We have the advantage of the majority of American people believing, as we do, that we need third parties, that we need a multi-party system. And we have to realize we have the weight of evidence that the two parties, the Democrats and Republicans, have done nothing other than enrich Wall Street and create war and suffering for decades now. And so we have that to our advantage. And I think one of the things as we look forward into how we do this is we continue the momentum, we continue to build. We recognize that it's hard, but this is not going to just appear out of the ground like it's a weed in your garden. I mean, this is something that we have to build. One of the things I'm really excited for and why I think this is different than it was 10 years ago is people like you and the platforms you have. We couldn't do this 10 years ago, have this type of conversation. I started doing media about 12 plus years ago, 12 and a half years ago. And you had to go to a studio or you had to be on a landline and call in. Like there was none of this, you know, I mean, like, and so this technology we have now, and like the courage and the brilliance of people like yourself and a lot of other folks in independent media, like that is the nucleus around which we build our movement. That communication, that education, that information, that coordination, that's how we continue to build this movement, right? And then we tie in labor, we tie in direct action, we tie in community and mutual aid. We do all those things that are necessary, you know, and the political party is just one aspect, right? Just as the political stuff, but it's tied in everything else. And we're all tied in through people like yourself. And that's how we win. We continue to build. We continue to take them on asymmetrically. We do it smartly. We don't run headlong into the edifice or the Leviathan, but we do it smartly and we persevere. And we will make a difference. And there are other things too. One is that you put pressure on the system to change. We keep running multi-party candidates or keep running multiple candidates in a two-party system. It's going to break the system. At some point, we're going to put so much pressure on the system that they will have to bring in ranked choice voting and eventually proportional representation. We keep doing this. It will happen. The other thing too is we keep putting the pressure and they will adopt some of our issues. I don't care if Mitch McConnell is the one who brings us Medicare for all. I really don't care as long as our folks get it. The people who need it get it. And so the idea is that just as the populists and People's Party did in the late 19th century, the progressives and the socialists did in the early 20th century, we put this pressure on the existing parties and eventually they have to adopt some of the things that we're pushing for. Not everything, but they'll adopt some. And so we do those three things. We build, we put the pressure on the system so that has to reform. And then we force the other parties to adopt some of our key issues. And that's how we win.
That's right. What is your take on politics in North Carolina today? And I asked this question because, I mean, I haven't lived there since high school, but when I lived there, North Carolina was a red state. I know that has changed. I mean, they did vote for Obama in 2008. Mm-hmm. But I'm curious, like, what is the take from people today in North Carolina? Would you say that most people are leaning more towards the Democratic Party, or do you think that there's a rise of independence happening in North Carolina as well?
There's a rise of independence, just like everywhere else. Look, we were out there. We collected more than 22,500 signatures. We spoke to probably 50,000 people in the process of doing that. And the desire for something different, for other options, for change. And I hate using the word change, right? We all got so burnt on that term with Obama. You know? So, but that, you know, I don't have but anyway, the idea that what we were met out there with is enthusiasm for something different, right? For other options was palpable. We saw that. People had asked me, what do people talk to you about when you're out there petitioning Ukraine or gas prices? And I said, you know what? Of course, everyone's concerned about cost of living, but what we hear over and over again is just a conversation about something different, about the need for something else. And North Carolina is a purple state, I guess. We'll elect a Democratic governor and a Republican senator in the same election. So I guess, you know, it's split. And there is a difference here. There are rural areas. We have urban areas. We have a lot of people moving here. We have a state that has high tech, but also some very poor and depressed areas, especially on our east and our mountains. You know, so we have a lot of people who are being left behind. And that's who we're talking to. That's who we believe our constituency is. And that's who we want to serve.
Do you feel like sometimes I like to compare Massachusetts to North Carolina because I feel like both cities have like the beach, the city, and the mountains. They're similar in that aspect a little bit. Do you feel like people in rural communities in North Carolina are forgotten about? Because I get that a lot here. And I do feel like people, especially politicians, when they do campaign here, they focus a lot on Boston, Worcester, Springfield, the big cities, but they tend to forget about the people in these rural areas here in Massachusetts where there aren't as many people living there. Do you feel like that same sentiment is happening in North Carolina as well, in like those rural towns?
It certainly is. It certainly is. We have areas in this state that have been left behind. In the last 10 years, as 1 million people moved to North Carolina, half our counties lost population. And those are primarily rural counties, a lot of those counties in the mountains or in the east. These were where manufacturing once was, or agriculture. And so what you've seen, of course, is the manufacturing has been sent overseas, bipartisan consent by both the Democrats and Republicans to do that. And the agriculture has just been consumed by industrial ag, right? By big ag. So the smaller farms that once provided living for, dozens of communities throughout North Carolina are gone. So we have these areas that are very depressed, that have been forgotten about, that don't see anyone coming up to them and asking them what's going on here, listening to them, trying to figure out a way to help them. And it's just, the big issue always that people bring up, you hear the Republican, Democrat, broadband, we need to bring broadband and everything else, which absolutely, broadband should be a public utility. It should be treated that way. Everyone should have it, et cetera, et cetera. If you don't understand that, I guess you were sleeping the last 2.5 years, but it's more than that. It's more than that. People are leaving those areas because they have not been left behind, but they've been destroyed through our economic policies. And so it's issues of education, it's issues of resources, it's issues of jobs. It's the war on drugs, because these are communities that are devastated by the opioid crisis. I mean, as well as the mass incarceration. I mean, this is where it occurs. We have 12 overdose deaths a day in North Carolina, and they occur in those rural areas. So it's about getting out there, listening to those folks, understanding what's been done to them in the name of a bipartisan consensus to make North Carolina the best state for business in the nation, which is what CNBC recently tagged North Carolina as the best state for business in the country. And they explained it as being a bipartisan success story. Democrats and Republicans put aside their differences to make North Carolina the best state for business in the country. At the same time, though, as we know, as Oxfam has reported, North Carolina is the worst state in the nation for workers. And so you clearly understand why it's the best state for business. Well, because it's the worst state for workers. And where has it hit the hardest? It's hit the hardest in our rural areas. So I completely agree with what you're saying, Sabrina, about the rural areas, not just they weren't left behind, they were purposely destroyed.
How is it for education in North Carolina now? Like, if I'm not mistaken, teachers in North Carolina cannot unionize, correct?
Correct. We're either the worst or the second worst state for unionization. I think South Carolina beats us out for that title, but it's a distinction without difference, right? Education has been a political football here for the 2 decades that I've known North Carolina. Teachers have been massively underpaid, under-resourced. We have a real issue here with the whole nonsense of school choice. It's a big Republican thing here, this idea of charter schools and all those other things, that will make sure there's a hierarchy for education for our children. We used to have one of the best state university systems in the country, the UNC system. I think most people recognize as this is something that should be emulated. And in the last 10 or 15 years, it's been overly politicized. And I don't think many people are pointing it at UNC the way they once did. We have a lot of challenges here, and it's been, again, purposeful. And it's been, the other side of it is, you could say the Republicans have been underfunding education, which they have. The other part, though, is that where we're really seeing some severe problems in our urban or suburban areas where all this population growth is occurring, those are Democrat areas. And those are areas that the Democrats who are in power in those counties and in those cities are letting come in, corporation after corporation, giving them massive tax breaks, totaling billions of dollars, in order to make sure that Apple or Toyota or whoever will come here. And then because we're giving those things away, we're cheating our school systems. We're allowing more people to move here, and we're not providing the resources to the schools that they need to accommodate that population growth. And worst of all is we're giving these subsidies, these benefits, these giveaways to corporations while people in the community are inundated with a population growth and an under-resourced school system.
That's right. And I often wonder too, like, where does all the money go that comes into the state? And I ask that question because, you have a professional football team. You'll have to remind me. I think the Charlotte Hornets came back. Aren't they the Bobcats now or something like that?
Yeah, we've got the Carolina Hurricanes, successful NHL franchise. I remember when they came down here, it was 97, the Canes, they used to be the Hartford Whalers, and they came down here, and the hockey was foreign, and the newspaper down here had a big insert explaining hockey, and now they're a great team. But it's a successful state. It's a state that is attracting a lot of high technology companies. And in order to do that, the state gives away billions of dollars to them. And the people suffer, workers suffer. It's not just the population growth and the tax that then comes on our education and our infrastructure, but it's also too just the increased costs. We allow these people to move in here under the guise of building jobs, which the data on that is sketchy. A lot of times what happens with these sweetheart deals between local municipalities and the state and these corporations is that there are NDAs. So you're supposed to have an understanding that, Apple's going to come in and they're going to bring in 2,000 jobs and everyone's going to be happy and it's going to be a boon. Well, when people try and go back 5 years later and see, did this happen? There's an NDA that doesn't allow them to see whether or not they actually hire people or that they just bring in people from the outside, which is ultimately, I think, is what happens with a lot of these jobs. Some of the things that are happening here with these companies coming in are obscene. We're giving more than $1 billion, the state of North Carolina, more than $1 billion to a Vietnamese auto manufacturer that's going to build an electric car. They still haven't built the car yet. They've never built the car. We're going to give them more than $1 billion. The same with this company called Boom, which is going to build the next Concorde supersonic jet. It's only on paper. They haven't built the plane yet, and we're going to give them like $500 million. At the same time, too, the state has a rainy day fund of, I think, close to $2 billion that it refuses to spend on anything. Certainly schools would be one place they could do it. There's no Medicaid expansion here. We have 1 in 4 adults in North Carolina are in collections for medical debt. 52% of our kids qualify for free school lunches because they're living in or near poverty. 52%. And meanwhile, we're giving away billions of dollars to Apple, which is the second most profitable corporation in the world after the king of Saudi Arabia's personal oil company. And, billions some odd dollars to Toyota, the most profitable car company in the world. Meanwhile, half our school kids qualify for free lunch. So, the imbalance here, this desire to make North Carolina the best state for business by exploiting, abusing, and grossly underpaying workers is a policy that both Democrats and Republicans have really embraced.
Yes. One thing I want to mention to people, if you go to visit North Carolina, a lot of times you're probably going to Raleigh, Durham, Chapel Hill area or Charlotte, or maybe even Wilmington if you're going towards the beach on the coast. But that's not the entire state. And I feel like those are the areas that are talked about, but you really have to visit other parts of the state and you'll see like those numbers that Matt is talking about. It's the areas that usually are not mentioned. Right. I'm curious, Matt, like, due to like the influx of transplants that have come into New York, or excuse me, not New York, North Carolina.
A lot of them from New York.
Come from New York. That's right. A lot of them from New York. Some people in North Carolina argue that that is actually what has increased the cost of living there. And I want to get your take on that.
It has. There's been for a long time now, North Carolina has beaten Florida in terms of people coming to North Carolina to retire. And then the state has really aggressively pursued technology companies, and now they're really pursuing tech manufacturing as well. Again, all of this is talking about through subsidies. And what you've seen a lot of people come to these areas. Look, the town I live in, Wake Forest, when my brother and sister-in-law moved here in 1998, there were 7,000 people there. Now there's 55,000 of us, close to 60,000. And we are not the fastest growing town in our county. You know, I mean, this has been, I've known this area now for decades, and, you know, people who've lived here much longer have a more real experience than I do with that. I mean, I have folks in my neighborhood where I live who live in their grandparents' homes, who've lived here their entire lives, and they are losing their homes. I've got two neighbors, both across the street from me, both bought out of the houses that they were renting. You know, corporations came in, bought their homes, and then they're gone because, you know, in case of the house right here, she was paying about $650, $700 a month, and they jacked it up to $700 to $1,300 a month. So people who are getting by, they are being exploited. They're being crushed because these corporations are coming in. They're bringing in people who are displacing. We're having gentrification as like everywhere else, but we also have this issue where corporations are buying homes, and that is drastically, it does two things. One, it ends up forcing people to pay higher rents because they come in and what they do charge for rent is much higher than what was before. And they do it in a mass way where they kind of flood an area. So it artificially rises the prices of rents in those areas. They also do that when they're purchasing the homes as well. They'll concentrate on a neighborhood or an area. And what they'll do then is that they'll buy a bunch of homes, lift the price of homes in the area. Everyone's familiar with the concept of comps, right? You know, so they'll raise the comps in the area, and then they'll start selling off their properties because they've artificially inflated the housing prices in that area. What they're tending to buy are the homes that working families are trying to buy, that like a young couple wants to start out in. And so in my area, it's impossible to find a home for less than $400,000. I know it doesn't sound much to someone who's in San Francisco, maybe, but you know, for here, what we're experiencing, and this is all the result of policy. This is not the free hand in the market or some BS like that. This is the policy of giving everything away to corporations, allowing them to do what they want, and then letting the people fend for themselves. Everyone's familiar with the term of socialism for the wealthy, rugged individuals from the poor. This is exactly it. And if I can elaborate one step further on this epidemic of corporations buying the homes, I think it's important people understand how this begins, where the genesis is. So in 2009, 2010, 2011, as about 10 million Americans lost their homes in the Great Recession. President Obama refused to bail them out, but they bailed out the banks. The banks took that money, and some of what they did with that money is they started buying those homes that those 10 million families had lost. And that begins this creation of these, ultimately they're bank owned, but these corporations that are buying these homes, again, often entry level working family homes, you know, and this is where it comes back to. This is deliberate policy. The people of, my town, county, state, throughout the country are the ones being exploited in order to make sure that the financialization policies of the last 5 decades continue to be successful and continue to squeeze every little bit amount of money to the top.
There's a question here from Roger Meadows really quick in the chat. I don't see education on your issues page, but do you support it when it comes to financing K through 12 public education, transferring the tax burden from homeowners to the federal government to cover 90% and mandate state pick up 10%?
Yeah, I don't know about the 90-10 thing. Like I specifics, I don't know. It could be 100, it could be 80-20, but I agree with that sentiment. I agree with how we do our education now. It allows wealthier communities to do much better with their education than poorer communities can do. I mean, that's just the way it works. It is brutal. It enforces a hierarchy, right? It enforces the haves and the have-nots in this country. And I am in favor of education-wise, pre-K all the way up through graduate school. You want to be a rocket scientist, whatever it is. You should have the ability and opportunity to go at no cost, at no direct cost. We all pay for it through our taxes. And that includes every other type of school out there, whether you want to be, whatever it is, vocational trade, we all should have the opportunity to be who we want to be. And if we do that as a nation, that investment, I mean, that type of what that would do to dramatically invigorate our economy. The only other investment I think that would come close to that would be a Medicare for all, healthcare for all, universal healthcare type of system in terms of the spark that it would provide for generations in our country.
Well said. Matthew, two other questions for you. One is, we've seen a lot of people, again, like go into Congress and they say they're going to do a lot of things. And then they get there, particularly those that were progressives that went through the Democratic Party. And then they get there and they don't push back, or they just kind of cower to establishment and corporate Democrats. How would you, or what would you do differently if you were in their position?
Right. I mean, look, if I want to do that, I would have run as a Democrat, and I have had the opportunities to do that. I've been a part of a lot of different things in DC that would have allowed me that opportunity to continue or to, take part in the grand game that happens in that bubble up there. And I've consistently walked away from it. There's probably something wrong with me that's propelling me back in that direction. Right. But, look, I'm not going there to be liked or well received. I want to break the system. I want to disrupt it. I want to get healthcare for our people. I want student debt and medical debt and a lot of consumer debt to be canceled. I want to right the wrong that's been done for, gosh, I mean, we talk about centuries of wrong that's been done, but just for make it easier, the last 5 decades. So the stuff from the Nixon administration, the war on drugs, the financialization policies, all those neoliberal grifts that have occurred for decades now. I want to right those wrongs because I see it in the people I love. I have people I love who can't afford healthcare, who have to check their banking account before they go to the doctor. I just talking about my neighbors who are losing their homes because the system is rigged against them. It's meant to make sure that corporations are allowed to buy homes. People aren't. I mean, so it's those types of things that this is why I'm doing this. I have a genuine hate. And I want to have a policy. I want to have a platform. I want to have a campaign built around compassion and love. But unfortunately, I keep coming back to this anger and this hate. And maybe that's a lot to do with the wars I was in and the lack of accountability for those, the deaths I've seen. Again, I've had, I keep coming back to the opioid overdoses. The number of people I know who've died from opioid overdose, and we're doing nothing about it other than continuing to criminalize people for substance abuse and addiction. It's that type of anger I have that's motivating me here. But also, too, there is a compassion and love that I'm trying to hang on to. But I see what happens. I see what happens with this Manchin Schumer climate change suicide pact, as it's been so brilliantly described, this giveaway to the oil and gas companies where we may get some oil, we may get some solar and wind, we may get some more electric cars, but it comes at the expense of doubling the acreage we give to oil and gas companies every year on land. 60 million acres on our waters are going to go to oil and gas companies every year. I mean, this is, again, a suicide pact. It is just branding and marketing done to make sure that Joe Biden somehow will be more successful. He and his party will be more successful in the midterms, but it is all so cynical. It is obscene, and it is leading, or not leading to, because we are already in ruin. It's continuing in that ruin, and it's disgusting that people are cheering it on, making it out as this is some great win when they all know the biggest win in that package is for the oil and gas companies, for Joe Manchin's friends. So it's that type of that's what's fueling me. And that's why if I go there, I'm sure I've said this before, Sabrina, but like if I go there, they're not getting their $15 billion aircraft carriers, certainly if our people don't have health care, so that's what's motivating me.
Awesome. Are there any other organizations aside from Green Party? Are there any other organizations that you're a part of, I guess, outside of the Green Party? And also, what advice would you give to someone who's thinking about running as a third party candidate?
Right. Yeah. So I've been a member of Veterans for Peace for a long time. I am a member of a number of different boards, like World Beyond War, Expose Facts, Veteran Intelligent Professionals for Sanity, a number of different local organizations working with the homeless. And then I've been a member of a think tank for 12 years now. I guess I've been with the think tank, Center for International Policy up in DC. Look it up. We don't take corporate donations. That's why we often run out of we can't pay our rent. We're an anti-war think tank, a pro-human rights think tank, one of the few in Washington, D.C. that does that type of work. We really stand apart from the think tanks that are nothing more than mouthpieces for the Democratic Party and the Republican Party in their guise as the parties of war and Wall Street. We definitely fall in parallel with a think tank like IPS, Institute for Policy Studies, or National Priorities Project, or in some ways with the new Quincy Institute for Responsible Statecraft. And in terms of what I would say to somebody who is looking to do this, first of all, I'll say, hey, get in contact with me. I'm happy to talk to you about it. Love to share what I've learned. I'm a first-time political candidate. I've made a ton of mistakes. If I had a time machine, man, I'd be stepping into that thing every day, right? But the thing about it is that, build your team, go into this with the mindset that, you're not going to have hundreds of thousands of dollars. You're not going to be able to do it the way the Republicans, Democrats do it, but that's why you're doing this. Right. And just have everything with looking at our example or Jill Stein's example, they are going to come after you. So you have to have everything tight, right? You have to make sure all your T's are crossed, I's are dotted, because they will come after you. And then just get out there and use what's driving you. Look, you're not running, if you're running as a Green or you're running with PSL or Socialist Alternatives or anyone else, you're not going to be running because you think this is some type of way to the big bucks, right? This is going to be arduous. It's going to be difficult. It's going to be very stressful. You're not going to be able to, it's going to cause severe hardship on you and your family as you do this. But remember why you're doing it, right? Who you're doing it for. And that's what I can say about the people who are part of the North Carolina Green Party, the people who are on my campaign. We're all doing it because of the people we love. And that's why we're doing it. Otherwise, we'd be in the Democratic Party, the Republican Party, or we wouldn't be doing it at all.
Awesome. Matthew, before you go, where can people find you? MatthewHoferSenate.org. If people can support us, donate, encourage others to donate. Again, we've got 2 lawsuits we're fighting down here, as well as we've got to run a campaign. So if people can help, I really appreciate it. And Sabrina, thank you so much for your time and for everything that you're doing. Thanks so much for coming on.
You bet. You have a good night.
You too.
All right, bye.
All right, guys, that was Matthew Ho. If you are just joining, he's running for U.S. Congress. Hold on one second. I got something stuck here. What happened here? Oh, clicked on the wrong thing. He's running for U.S. Senate. He's from North Carolina, and he's running through the Green Party. So definitely check out that website. You guys, he gave some good advice there. So definitely check that out. I am going to give a quick shout out to people who are patrons, and then I'm going to go to our thumbnail and tell you what we're talking about tonight. And I'll go to some comments as well. So quick shout out to everyone who is a Sabby patron. Thank you guys so much for your support. If you're interested in being a Sabby patron, I have 5 categories: members, Sabbies, Sabsters, Sabinators, and the ultimate, of course. All of their names are listed here. You can also see their names scrolling across the bottom of the screen below. And I want to give a special shout out to a new Sabby patron. Let's give it up for newbie Hosen Kosoroja. I hope I pronounced your name correctly. Hossein Kosoroja. I hope I pronounced that correctly. Again, thank you. Thank you so much. Really do appreciate your support, you guys. It really does help. Okay. What are we talking about tonight? Let's go ahead and get into that thumbnail. Go ahead and hit that like button for me if you haven't had a chance to do so. That really does help me out with the algorithm here. Okay. Tonight, we're talking about Roger Waters' mic drop. Yes, Roger Waters had a mic drop moment, and I can't wait to get into that tonight. I think you're going to really enjoy, you're really going to enjoy that conversation. Also, I'm going to discuss Bernie, Sinema, and Manchin give in. What is that all about? I have a lot to say about this Inflation Reduction Act, guys. I'm going to break it down for you in a way that I hope everyone will be able to understand what's going on. And of course, Matthew Ho was just here. So thank you, guys. Let's go ahead and get into some comments, and then we'll get into the first story here. All right. Quick shout out to Loca-Cola. Thank you so much for the super chat. Hi, Sabby. Greetings from the Jersey Shore. Uh-oh. I just thought about the show for a second. Great show, by the way. My aunt lives in Sandwich. Hyannis is lovely also. All right, awesome. So we got someone here who has family on the Cape. For those who don't know, Sandwich and Hyannis is on the Cape, Cape Cod. We call it the Cape. Jay, just had the second person in 3 days tell me I look like Barack Obama with the biggest difference between me and him. He dropped all those bombs. I'd be dropping love. Well, Jay, I don't know what you look like, Jay, but well said there. Carrie, this is so sad. Got my PhD from UNC in 2007, and the UNC system was worthy of emulation back then. Yeah, it sounds like a lot has changed, huh? I mean, I haven't lived there since high school, so I'll go ahead and take that comment on Rockfin, Eric, and then we can get into the first news story. All right, that shout out here to Roger Meadows for the tip on Rockfin. Sorry, guys, I can't talk tonight. I only had 2 cups of tea today. 2 cups of tea, green tea. I usually have 3. So if I'm a little sluggy, that's why. Waiting with berated breath for General Sabby to send the order to troops to say that she and Dr. Stein will be using and taking the language of Massachusetts public banking and Massachusetts Medicare for All Act to put towards a ballot initiative for the 2024 election, giving people of Massachusetts a reason to come out and vote. Stein can take the Medicare for All initiative, and you could take the public banking initiative, and you pair off into teams going to each home. Interesting, Roger. I would need some help, Roger. I need people. I really would. I really do need people on the ground to help. Not kidding. Thank you for this tip as well. If the person at the house asks you how you're going to pay for Medicare for All, that's when the representative from the other team, Massachusetts Public Bank, can step in and say, through the surplus generated by a public bank, and explain to them what a public bank is. Sponsors of each team working in tandem, giving the 1-2 punch. Massachusetts is not a big state, so there's not as much ground to cover as New York, California, and Alaska. So there's less ground to cover. Now when you go into rural Massachusetts, remember, we have the mountains. I still have to go to the Berkshire. I have to go to the Berkshires. I need some help. Thank you for this tip as well. We, the followers of Sabby, are ready. Followers of Sabby. This is funny. The followers of Sabby are ready and waiting to throw our support behind a real campaign. Only you and Stein can get this done. I believe once you ignite that fire, the rest of your compadres, not just RBN, will start one too. Too many people in YouTube who are from BI states are focusing on the federal government. I understand Kyle, breaking points, black and majority report not doing it since Maryland, New York State, and Virginia are not ballot initiative states. Interesting. But everyone else who is in a BI state is waiting for the other people to put their foot forward. Sabrina, I believe you are that person. You're really putting me on the spot, Roger. Wow. Once you do it, the other YouTubers will follow suit in their states. You will be their inspiration. I saw it in a vision. Okay. Sabrina, the leader of the YouTube Ballot Initiative Brigade, a leader among YouTubers. Remember, it's not about the queen. It's about the knights, bishop, rooks, and pawns that we get this done. I believe in power of Dr. Stein and Sabby, the Wonder Twins. Wonder Twin powers activate. This is funny. Form a Massachusetts Medicare for All ballot initiative form of a Massachusetts Public Bank ballot initiative. I believe in the power of Sabby. Come on, Sab. We need a win that only you and Stein can deliver. If you don't, you can no longer call yourself a progressive. Sabby, 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 Sabby. Oh my God. Why does that have to be me? I need some help. I would really need help. Seriously. Looks a little fuzzy. Not exaggerating there. I would need some help. What is this? Sabrina's future is to do media going forward rather than slimy electoral politics, just to guess. I would never run for office. I don't think, I mean, it puts a lot on people, and it puts a lot on people's like families too. It wouldn't just be me running. It would be me, my mom, my dad, my sister, like my husband, like it would be everybody really when you get into politics. That's how it is. Okay, let's go ahead and get into our first news story tonight. We need to talk about this Inflation Reduction Act. Now, when I discuss this tonight, I do want to speak about this in a way that everyone can understand exactly what is going on. So I'm going to break this up into parts because that's what I like to do as an educator. I like to break things down for people. So first, I'm going to explain to you what exactly is the Inflation Reduction Act. So let's start with that, and then we will go to other sections here. Let's go ahead and get into it, ladies and gentlemen. Democrats passed a major climate, health, and tax bill. Here is what's in it. You see, he has a thumbs up there. There's really no need to be cheering. I'll get into that in a second. Senate Democrats, after weeks of negotiations to revive the core of their election year agenda, passed a spending bill which would attempt to tackle climate change, the high cost of prescription drugs, and lower the deficit by roughly $300 billion. Late Saturday night into Sunday morning, senators voted on amendments to Democrats' major spending bill that tackles healthcare, climate, and taxes. All right, let's pay attention here. The legislation passed through the budget reconciliation process, which means all 50 Democrats and one tiebreaker vote from Vice President Harris were needed, since none of the 50 Republican senators voted for the bill. It also restricts the measures in the bill to those directly change federal spending and revenue. Okay, let's jet down here. Overall, the bill is very scaled down solution to what many Democrats, including President Biden, had asked for originally. Keep that in mind, ladies and gentlemen, as we go further into this. Now, I am going to go ahead and start with the climate change portion of the bill. More than $300 billion would be invested in energy and climate reform, the largest federal clean energy investment in U.S. history. The bill has support from many environmental and climate activists, but is short of the $555 billion that Democrats had originally called for. So that right there lets you know, just talking about the climate portion of that bill right now, that it's not enough. Surprise. Just on that section alone so far, it's not enough. So yeah, the climate issue is still going to be a problem because they don't have, I don't want to say the balls, they don't have the guts to actually implement the amount that we really need. And I would argue even that $555 billion is still, And the reason why I want you to think about this, if people say, well, that's a lot of money, I want you to think about all the money that they've given to Ukraine over the past couple of months. So the money was there. If you reduce the military industrial complex budget, you can easily give the amount that is really needed for some type of climate change to tackle it. But they don't want to do that. So I just want to point that out to people because I see a lot of people dancing around and clapping and being very excited about this passing. And I'm going to explain to you tonight why this is really not enough and this is crumbs. Let's go back in. This portion of the bill takes on transportation and electricity generation and includes $60 billion for growing renewable energy infrastructure and manufacturing like solar panels and wind turbines. It also includes several tax credits for individuals on things like electric vehicles and making homes more energy efficient. The bill would, according to Democrats, lower greenhouse gas emissions by 40% based on 2005 levels. Again, that's based on the levels from 2005. Okay. It's 2022, folks. By the end of the decade, which is short of the 50% Biden had originally claimed for. So again, 40% versus the 50%. And I would argue they should have aimed higher than 50. See, this is why my dad always told me, you know, you shoot high, you aim high. Always ask for more than what you expect to get, right? So if they wanted to get 50%, they probably should have asked for 60 or 70% in order to get that 50%. They asked for 50%, they gave them 40%. Always ask for more. Do that in your life with other things as well, by the way. When you're trying to negotiate salary, always ask for more than what you really want. What else can they say? No. They say no. Okay. At least you tried. But they should have asked for more than that if they really wanted to get 50. And I think they know that. It puts us within a close enough distance that further executive action, state and local government efforts, and private sector leadership could plausibly get us across the finish line by 2030. So again, for the people that don't think local politics is important, they're telling you right here, in order for this to really get to that goal, they're going to need state and local governments to go on with this too. So there's that. Now, let's go ahead and go on further here. Now we're going on to lowering the cost of prescription drugs. And this, it really made some people want to pull their hair out. On health reforms, the bill takes on making prescription drugs more affordable, but there are some limits, of course. This bill includes historic measure that allows the federal health secretary to negotiate the prices of certain expensive drugs each year for Medicare. Notice it says certain expensive drugs. Only certain drugs were a part of this. You see, when they first pitched this idea, we were going to lower the drug cost, the prescription drug costs. We're going to let Medicare negotiate these prices. They said it kind of vaguely. They didn't mention this detail that it's certain drugs, certain ones. Let's go back in. But this won't impact every prescription drug or every patient. Well, look at that, ladies and gentlemen. It doesn't even affect every patient. And it won't take effect quickly. See everybody dancing around and jumping in circles. The negotiations will take effect for 10 drugs covered by Medicare in 2026, increasing to 20 drugs in 2029. So for all the people dancing and jumping around, this doesn't even take effect until 2026, and it only applies to 10 drugs that are covered under it. So what are people supposed to do right now from 2022 to 2026? When people are dealing, remember, this is the Inflation Reduction Act. People are dealing with inflation right now. So why isn't this taking effect right now? What happens if Democrats lose in 2024, which I predict they will? What happens to this then? What happens if the Republicans win and they come in and overturn this? Then what? This should take effect right now. Ro Khanna was on here and he mentioned this Inflation Reduction Act, which he really wanted them to pass. But Ro Khanna didn't mention that this don't even take effect yet. People need help now, not in 2026. People need help now. They can't even help you now. They can't help you now, but they can help people in Ukraine now. See how that works? You have to wait. Now, it goes on to say the portion of the bill that tried to cap at $35 per month for the price of insulin, a drug that is incredibly expensive in the US compared to other countries, was ruled out of order by the Senate parliamentarian. Well, Well. Not the Senate parliamentarian again. And this is interesting because when Ro Khanna was on here, what did I say to him? I said, if it's not Kyrsten Sinema and Joe Manchin, it's the Senate parliamentarian. And he laughed. I didn't. And here we are again. And there's something I want to tell you about the Senate parliamentarian as well as we go on. I'm going to show you how this is all theater. I'm going to show you how this is all a game. Insulin, which is expensive for a lot of people in this country. The Senate parliamentarian ruled that out. So if you are diabetic and you're one of those people that has to ration your insulin, the Senate parliamentarian just said, oh, well, to you. Let's go on. The Senate parliamentarian who ruled the cap could apply on Medicare, a government program, but not on private insurance. You see, this is why, this is the key here. People who have Medicare are probably not struggling to pay for insulin. People who don't have Medicare and only have private insurance or have no insurance are seriously struggling to pay for the insulin. So why would you only give that benefit to people who have Medicare? That benefit should be for everyone. Let's go on. So Democrats split the measure between Medicare and private insurance, but Republicans ultimately blocked the measure for private insurance. So you see this? See how this just went back and forth? First, let's blame the Senate parliamentarian. Now we're going to blame the Republicans. They're the ones who blocked it for the private insurance. But I'm going to show you guys, while they're both complicit, they are both at fault here. I'm going to show you that in a second. The parliamentarian also ruled that a measure that was in the bill to force drug companies to offer rebates if prescription prices outpaced inflation was not totally in line with the rules for the budget reconciliation. She said that it could apply to Medicare patients, but not those who have private insurers. You know what they're saying here? Who qualifies for Medicare? You have to be what, 65 and up? Is it still 65 and up? Right? Okay. They're basically saying, screw you to everyone under 65. Now, why would they say that? Let's think about something here for a minute. Who are the people who come out to vote consistently? Usually people who are 65 and up. They're going to fight to keep them alive. They don't care about the rest of us because we're not reliable to come out and vote. Could be a stretch there. I could be stretching that a bit. Maybe. Maybe not. But they don't care about the rest of us. They made that very clear. The bill puts a cap of $2,000 on out-of-pocket prescription drug costs for people on Medicare, effective 2025. See this? I don't understand how people are affording this. I really don't. There is a 3-year extension on healthcare subsidies in the Affordable Care Act, originally passed in a pandemic relief bill last year, estimated by the government to have kept premiums at $10 per month or lower for the vast majority of people covered through the federal health insurance exchange. That helps millions of Americans avoid spikes in their healthcare costs. Okay. Oh, buddy. Oh, boy. I told you. Tax reform. Here's another one. The legislation creates a 15% minimum tax for corporations making $1 billion or more in income, bringing in more than $300 billion in revenue. Unfortunately, a portion of that got cut, though, is one that narrowed the carry interest tax loophole. Arizona Kyrsten Sinema agreed to sign onto the bill if this measure which would have changed the way private equity income is taxed, was cut. Democrats said it would have brought in $14 billion in revenue. Now the rotating billing has gone back to Kyrsten Sinema. They just keep passing this back and forth. It's the Senate parliamentarian, it's Kyrsten Sinema, it's Joe Manchin, it's the Republicans. And I told you, when Joe Manchin changed his mind and agreed to sign on to this, I said, watch, someone else is going to come in and they're going to remove items from this bill. And that is exactly what has happened. Not one person, but multiple people who removed items from the bill. Now, we expect the Republicans to do it, but I'm talking about Democrats who did it. So there you go. A few more of this here. Instead of a 1% excise tax on stock buybacks was introduced, and it could bring in roughly 5 times as much revenue as the carried interest measure. However, it wouldn't take effect until next year, raising predictions of a rush of buybacks by some companies before 2023 rolls around. And then this part here I wanted to tell you about. A major portion of the bill that isn't included due to opposition from West Virginia, Joe Manchin, is extended the child tax credit. What I tell you guys, Manchin expressed last year that the cost to extend the credit was too high. Okay. Joe Manchin just said, screw you and your kids. What'd I tell you? They just passed this back and forth. Too high. But progressives, including Vermont Senator Bernie Sanders, have continued to push for its inclusion in the bill. And there's more that goes on. So let's talk about this for just a second. And there's some other items I want to show you about this as well. As I mentioned earlier, I'm already seeing people cheering on this bill. There is no reason for you to cheer. The fact that someone like Joe Manchin changed his mind, that right there let me know this was not going to be something that was really going to be a game changer for American people. And it seems like to me, when it comes to the healthcare issue, when it comes to prescription drugs, they only really trying to help people who are 65 and up. So there's that element as well. But there are more problems about this bill that was not mentioned in that NPR article. First, I want to show you the changes that Kyrsten Sinema made, because it wasn't just that change that was mentioned in that article. Now, shout out to Case Study QB here for this. Now, here are some of the changes that Kyrsten Sinema made with this bill. 1, she dropped the $14 billion tax increase affecting wealthy hedge fund managers. 2, remove the tax on carried interest. And 3, limited restrictions on depreciated asset reductions. Now, the question that I have, and I think all of you should be asking this question as well, why is Kyrsten Sinema trying to protect these hedge fund managers so much? A while back, Franco was on and we talked about that elite secret meeting, the Bilderberg meeting that happened. Kyrsten Sinema was there. And Franco had a good point. He said, out of all the people in the Senate, why is Kyrsten Sinema at this meeting? Why was she there with the CEO from Shell, Exxon? Why was she there with all those billionaires? Out of all the people in the Senate, it was Kyrsten Sinema. And now you see, what is she doing? She removed the $14 billion tax increase affecting wealthy hedge fund managers. This is what she's there for. She's there to say, I'm a Democrat, but she's also there to say, I am here to protect the wealthy corporations and the billionaires. That's what Kyrsten Sinema is there to do. That's why she doesn't want to pass anything. This is why she voted against $15 minimum wage, because Kyrsten Sinema is not there to look out for the American people. Kyrsten Sinema is there to look out for billionaires, or not working class American people. She's there to look out for billionaires and corporations. And you need to ask yourself why. What's in it for her? Is she going to run again? If she doesn't run again, what's our next step? This is what she was brought there to do. So you see why I talked about that meeting, that Bilderberg meeting, and now you see what's happening? This is why it's important. You need to know who they're meeting with. You need to know who their donors are, because it explains in the way that they legislate. Now, I told you guys multiple times before that they don't pass anything that doesn't have some type of corporate interest, right? Now, Bernie Sanders, oh, we don't want to go to that one yet. Let's go to the Senate parliamentarian one. Let's go to this one first. Then we'll go to the Bernie Sanders one. So shout out to Case Study QB here, because he was able to get a clip of the Senate parliamentarian, them discussing the Senate. I cannot talk tonight. Them discussing the Senate parliamentarian not agreeing to those drug prices. So listen to this, because to me, it's just, I don't understand how you excuse this. I really don't.
Talk about prescription drug prices. I do know the Senate parliamentarian just this morning did kill one provision to cap prescription drug prices. How are you feeling about that right now? I know that was important for you.
Yeah, it is important. It was always a question, though, once we went beyond Medicare. We had hoped that would be included, but it was always a question. The biggest driver on these costs is Medicare. And as you know, we have been trying for years to get Medicare, give them the power to do what the VA does for veterans. The VA negotiates and gets about a 40% reduction in prices for veterans because they negotiate. So Medicare, huge buyer, the biggest one in this space, hasn't been able to do that. And I have, since I was in the U.S. House of Representatives back in 1998, I used to do these bus trips from Detroit over to Windsor, 10 minutes on a bus. You could drop the cost 40%. So it's outrageous. So right now, the most important thing is that the biggest driver, the biggest customer on prescription drugs, which is Medicare, is going to be able to negotiate prices. We're going to cap out-of-pocket costs for seniors at $2,000 a year, which is a big deal. And, if we can get this cap $35 a month cap on insulin for people, wow, this is a big win.
For seniors. Seniors. Not Gen X, not millennials, not Gen Z, seniors. That's it. They are protecting the group that comes out to support them. That's what they're doing. Not us. They don't see us as important. Just a fact here. Seniors. Now, that was in reference to the Senate parliamentarian deciding to remove the $35 cap for insulin. Now, some people have come back to me and they said, well, they couldn't help it. They were all on board, but the Senate parliamentarian. I want to explain to you why this is theater. If the Democratic Party really had so much issue with the Senate parliamentarian and they really wanted that $35 cap to pass, then why is the Senate parliamentarian still there? If you don't think that a Senate parliamentarian has not been removed before, you would be wrong. In fact, George W. Bush, it happened under his presidency. Let's take a look at this. I'm not going to read the entire article, but I just want to prove a point. Now, this was back in 2001. Senate parliamentarian Robert Dove, the official responsible for enforcing the chamber's rules and procedures, has been asked to leave his post after a dispute with the Republican leadership. Senate sources said yesterday. Dove angered Republicans, especially Majority Leader Trent Lott, with at least 2 recent rulings that effectively made it harder for the GOP to push President Bush's budget and tax cut proposals through the evenly divided body. Republicans declined to say why Dove had been asked to leave, but his departure will force the appointment of a new parliamentarian. One of the Senate's most important, if least known, officers at a time in which the Democrats and Republicans are seeking to operate under an unprecedented power-sharing arrangement. The office of the parliamentarian has always been one of the most important in the Senate, but Dove's rulings have been particularly sensitive this year, with the body split between 50 Democrats and 50 Republicans. My, does that sound familiar? Well. So again, I just want to remind you that in 2001, Robert Dove, who was the Senate parliamentarian at that time under George W. Bush's presidency, was removed because he was not ruling the way the Republican leadership wanted him to. He was holding up budget proposals from President Bush. So they got rid of Dove. So to that point, I am here to let you know that if Democrat leadership were really not happy about what the Senate parliamentarian is doing, they would ask the Senate parliamentarian to leave. They can replace her with someone else. The Senate parliamentarian is doing exactly what Democrat leadership want her to do. That includes Joe Biden. That includes Nancy Pelosi. That includes Chuck Schumer. I'm going to say this again. In the past, when party leadership have had difficulties and were angered by decisions that Senate parliamentarians have made, they have asked them to leave. So, for the Senate parliamentarian to not approve the $35 cap for insulin, if the Democrat Party leadership had so much anger about that, if they were so troubled by that, they would ask the Senate parliamentarian to step down and they would replace her with someone else. They are not doing that because the Senate parliamentarian is doing exactly what Dem leadership want them to do. Now, you may ask, why would they want them to do that? Because you got to look at all of the politicians in the Democratic Party that are in Congress that are taking all this money from Blue Cross Blue Shield, from Aetna, from United Healthcare. You think all of them really want to put a cap on insulin that's $35? No, because their donors don't want that cap. This is why I tell you to follow the money. This is why I tell you that this is all theater. And this is why I tell you that none of them are actually going to fight for you. It's all a game. They have multiple rotating villains. They take turns and point to who's going to be the next one to strike something down. But they are there because Dem leadership wants them to be there. They are there on purpose. They are not there by mistake. Do not confuse that. So there. If you didn't know about Robert Dove, you learned something about him tonight. And the Democrat leadership could do the exact same thing. Exact same thing. But it's not just the Senate parliamentarian. In the first article, I showed you where they were blaming Republicans for the reason why it didn't pass with private insurance. I want to show you something. I want to show you why both of them are at fault. Let's give a shout out to Warren Gunnels because he was not playing around. You see, Warren, he broke this down hour by hour. Our amendments. So he's telling you what was removed in the time that it was removed and how it was voted on. Cut Medicare drug prices by 50%. Here are the votes, ladies and gentlemen. 1 to 99. Now, last time I checked, there aren't 99 Republicans in the Senate. No. That means that includes Democrats. 1 to 99. Democrats voted against that too. You see it? Let's go on. At 1:15 a.m., expand Medicare. 3 to 97. Again, this 97 includes Democrats. Oh, and by the way, this 1 to 99, when I say that includes Democrats, remember Miss Elizabeth Warren, who claims to be so progressive, that includes her too. So somebody explain this. Explain this. Why? You see what I mean? You see how NPR, that article, they tried to blame it just on the Republicans. But here comes Warren with the numbers. Let's go on. At 4:01 a.m., Civilian Climate Corps. 1 to 98. Again, part of that 98 are Democrats. 7:48 a.m. extend the child tax credit. Now, if you'll notice, that article said that Joe Manchin did not approve of that. But right here, 1 to 97. So a couple of people did not vote here. A couple of people abstained for whatever reason. And this is the one we're about to go into now. Strike fossil fuel brakes. 1 to 99. And I think we all know that it was Bernie who was that one for that one. And I'm going to get into that video in just a second. But I wanted to show you these numbers from Warren because it's very telling. So if anyone that you have seen is basically just blaming the Republicans for this, you go ahead and show them Warren's tweet and let them see that the Democrats are a part of this as well. Now, why would all those Democrats vote to remove these items as well? Why? Because it's one corporate party. Republicans and Democrats together, one corporate party. Now, let's go into this fossil fuels issue because they talked about climate measures in this bill. But Bernie Sanders, shout out to him for pointing this out, was the one who mentioned that you're giving more money to fossil fuel companies in the same bill where you're supposed to try to help do some type of climate reform. Listen to this. Let's go into it.
But, Mr. President, the bad news is that this bill, as currently written, includes a huge giveaway to the fossil fuel industry, both in the reconciliation bill that we are considering and in a side deal that was just made public a few days ago. Mr. President, under this legislation, the fossil fuel industry will receive billions of dollars in new tax breaks and subsidies over the next 10 years, on top of the $15 billion in tax breaks and corporate welfare that they already receive every year. And interestingly enough, Mr. President, that may well be the reason why BP, one of the largest oil companies in the world, supports this bill. It may be the reason why Shell, another huge oil company, supports this bill. And it is the reason, I suspect, why the CEO of ExxonMobil is pleased by many of the provisions included in this deal. So we've got to...
First of all, for Bernie Sanders to sit up there and say, it may be the reason why. No, there's no maybe, Bernie. It is the reason why. Let's be real. What do you mean? It may be the reason why Exxon supports this. No, Bernie, it is exactly the reason why. You're the one that told us about the money in politics. You're the one that told us about the corruption. What do you mean it may be? You cannot afford to be this nice at this point in time. You cannot. Let's go back in.
Think a little bit about what it means when major oil companies who are in the process of destroying the planet support this legislation. Under this bill, up to 60 million acres of public waters must be offered up for sale each and every year to the oil and gas industry before the federal government approves any new offshore wind development. To put that in perspective, 60 million acres is the size of the state of Michigan. Further, under this bill, up to 2 million acres of public lands must be offered up for sale each and every year to the oil and gas industry.
Pause. I hope everyone caught that. Under that bill, public land must be sold to the oil and gas industry. If that's not a red flag for everyone, how can you celebrate this? How can you celebrate it? Public land. And that depends on what they consider to be public land. What if some of that public land is native public land? Wouldn't be the first time.
Before leases can move forward for any renewable energy development on public lands. In total, this bill will offer the fossil fuel industry up to 700 million acres of public lands and waters to oil and gas drilling over the next decade, far more than the oil and gas industry could possibly use.
Did you hear that? More drilling over the next decade. Now, Bernie Sanders gave that speech and pointed out that money is going to fossil fuel companies underneath that legislation, but Bernie still voted for the bill. You know, the Democrat politicians that we have in Congress are weak. They're weak-minded. They have no fight. Bernie Sanders just might as well go home and sit down. Just go home already, Bern. Really? He still voted for it. They have no fight. They have nothing. They're all sold out. All of them. I want to show you something. My former mayor had something to say about this as well. Mayor Marty Walsh. And they're asking Marty Walsh, shout out to Case Study QB here for this, about Bernie's statement about how this package doesn't really address working families' pocket. That was something else that Bernie mentioned as well. I want you to listen to something that Marty Walsh said. Again, this is my former mayor, so keep that in mind. Listen to this.
Bernie Sanders has said that the problem he sees with the economic package is that it does not directly address people's pocketbooks as prices rise. Despite the title of the legislation, that's his criticism. How do you answer that criticism?
Well, I think one of the biggest ones is we have millions of seniors in America today. My mother's one of those folks that are paying extraordinary amounts of money for prescription drugs. And by allowing the companies to be able to Medicare, Medicaid, and to negotiate prices and bring those prices down will help millions of seniors in America. That is a big win for a lot of people in this country. And I think that
there it is again. There's that word again. Bring it back. Here's the word again. Pay attention.
How do you answer that criticism?
Well, I think one of the biggest ones is we have millions of seniors in America today. My mother's one of those folks that are paying extraordinary amounts of money for prescription drugs. And by allowing the companies to be able to Medicare, Medicaid, and to negotiate prices and bring those prices down will help millions of seniors in America.
Will help millions of seniors. Again. Forget the rest of you. Let's just help seniors with their medical bills. Let's just help seniors with their medical expenses. Let's just help seniors get out of this medical rut. What about everybody else? What's with it? Why does it always have to be exclusive to certain groups? What's with the means testing here? Only seniors. That's all we're going to look out for when it comes to medical in this country. Isn't that a damn shame?
That is a big win for a lot of people in this country. And I think that when you think about who's on fixed incomes and who we have to help, if you're a younger worker and you want to better your situation in life, people are doing that. They're jumping from job to get better paying jobs. We're making investments in workforce development and job training programs, and we're creating those.
Marty, you know damn well, especially coming from Boston, he's saying the younger people are doing that by jumping from job to job. Yeah, younger people jump from job to job. But you want to know something else? A lot of these companies have no health insurance. So what Marty Walsh is basically saying to you, they're going to look out for the seniors when it comes to the medical expenses, but they're not going to look out for the young people because young people are jumping from job to job, so they're all right. If young people were all right, they wouldn't have to jump from job to job, Marty. They could stay at the employer they're at. If they were getting good raises or real raises or even getting a freaking raise, if they were getting promotions, they wouldn't have to jump from job to job. Screw you guys, because you're able to job hop. So we're just going to look out for the seniors because they're living on a fixed income. As if the younger people don't have to live on tight budgets right now either. This is the mindset of a lot of people in this country. He says, helping the seniors, this will help a lot of people. Aren't millennials the largest population? Listen, bruh, this country is laughable. It is laughable at this point. I think Rob Durden summed this up the best. And then I'll go over to Roger Waters here. Rob Durden, he's a part of Indie News Network. Follow him over there. Build Back Better was originally $3.5 trillion and was touted by Democrats. 6 months passed and Manchin had the price tag down to $1.7 trillion. 6 more months go by, they pass a bill a quarter that big and 1/10 as big as Build Back Better and take a victory lap. This is the Democrats in a nutshell. Where's the lie? He's right. This is what they do. They get it down to just the bare crumbs and they celebrate like it's 1999. So I wanted to talk in length about this tonight because I want you to understand, because there are people out there saying this is a good thing. It is not a good thing. And I hope I broke it down for you tonight so that you can understand. Now do you see why there are so many problems with this? It's poor, it's weak, it's pathetic. And if they can give a huge package to Ukraine over and over again every 2 weeks, they damn sure can do better for the American people. This is not something to applaud. It is not time to sing and dance the Kool and the Gang celebration. Not now. I'm going to go to some of the comments and then we'll go on to the next story here. Michelita says, exactly 100, Sabrina. It's all a ruse, a game. It is like these people just play Monopoly game, but in real life. Buying up all the properties too. Thank you for the super chat, Tool Druid. The parliamentarian is an unelected boogeyman they can use as an excuse for their inaction. That's right. Tool Druid also says, notice you never heard a word about the parliamentarian during Bush or Clinton or Obama's presidency. It's a new tactic they've pulled out, making it part of their rotating villain act. Disgusting. And Bush got rid of the parliamentarian because he wasn't doing what he wanted him to do. If you just joined, pass that on to your friends. Leroy says, pass the buck is the name of the game. Bad Cookie says, this bill is a shell of what it was supposed to be. Might as well not even pass the bill at this point. It's just a corporate giveaway. Right. And this is the second time we've seen something like this happen, right? Remember last year when we said, just cut the bill, just don't do it. It's nothing. The infrastructure bill, same thing. Weak, pathetic. I'll take that comment on Rockfin, Eric. Okay. Thank you for the tip on Rockfin, Roger Meadows. Man, that sucks with the drugs. I guess someone with a doctorate and an activist with a YouTube show is going to have to do something about that using a ballot initiative. Man, I'm thinking, who can we get? That would get on a horse and go galloping into the Berkshire. No way. Galloping into the Berkshire Mountains to get signatures. Sounds like a Lord of the Rings reference, the Berkshire. But it also sounds like a job for the Wonder Twins. Thank you so much for the tip, Roger Meadows. Roger's picking on me because I was watching Lord of the Rings over the weekend. I've seen it like 1,000 times. I've lost count, but I love Lord of the Rings. And I mentioned it on Twitter, and someone said to me, tell me you're a nerd without telling me you're a nerd. Oh, dear. Okay. On to something a little bit different. Roger Waters had an interview with CNN that I think was pretty cool that you guys should hear. Oh, I don't think this is at the starting point. Give me just a second. 257. Oh, maybe it is at the starting point. I don't know. Give me a second. No, it is not. 257. Dude. Okay. Anyway, Roger Waters had an interview with CNN, and it went pretty well for Roger Waters. Didn't go so well with the other guy, though. Did not go so well for him. Now, I want to go ahead and play parts of this and chime in between, because Roger Waters, for those who do not know, I think most of you guys know this, but some of you may not. Roger Waters, obviously huge Assange activist, is pretty political, has known to be pretty political at his shows as well. Some people like that, some people don't. And Roger Waters is like, dude, this is who I am. Take it as it is, or just go, basically. So there was a discussion here about the media, about the politics in the United States. And like I said, I think it went really well for Roger Waters. I do not think it went so well for the CNN commentator here. So let's go ahead and get into this.
Does a person in the crowd have to buy in to the message? I've always loved the music.
Right.
Some of the messages I can buy into, and some I can't.
I've only got one message. Two strangers passing in the street, by chance two passing glances meet, and I am you, and what I see is me. That is my message. And that was on Medal, which was in 1970. And basically, my message hasn't changed. I recognize your humanity, but I recognize all the Russians and the Chinese and the Ukrainians and the Yemenis and the Palestinians.
Are you...
Watch this. Now listen to what he just said when he talks about recognizing humanity. I should actually take it back to the beginning, because you missed the part where the guy said that he can't buy into everyone's message. Okay.
I'm happy for him.
But I'm saying, like, do I have to buy in? Does a person in the crowd have to buy in to the message? I've always loved the music.
Right.
Some of the messages I can buy into, and some I can't.
I've only got one message. Two strangers passing in the street, by chance two passing glances meet, and I am you, and what I see is me. That is my message. And that was on Medal, which was in 1970. And basically, my message hasn't changed. I recognize your humanity, but I recognize all the Russians and the Chinese and the Ukrainians and the Yemenis and the...
This piece right here. This piece is so important. I want you to look at his facial expression.
And that was on medal, which was in 1970. And basically, my message hasn't changed. I recognize your humanity, but I recognize all the Russians and the Chinese and the Ukrainians.
Look at his face. Look at him. He's like, what? Mic drop. There's more I'll get to. But what I thought was interesting here is that he said, listen, I recognize your humanity. In the United States, as an American, I recognize your humanity, but I also recognize humanity for people who are Russian, people who are Chinese, people who are from Yemen. And you see the look on his face. Look at him. First thing he thinks is, oh God, dear, don't say that. Don't say the words on here. How dare you? I'm freaked. This is going to make me look bad. Yeah.
Ukrainians and the Yemenis and the Palestinians.
Are you an equal opportunity offender on this tour? Here's why I ask. I remember the last tour, of course.
Notice he didn't comment on that. Notice he did not comment on that. Can't talk about Palestine, can't talk about China, can't talk about Yemen. You cannot bring those up. Let's move on to the next question. Let's talk about your tour.
I came and watched very much, about Trump. And in the current show, you've got a montage of war criminals, according to you. And
I have to skip this part right here with the music because of copyright. But basically what he's saying here is that he's been to his shows before when Roger Waters was complaining about Trump. I'm assuming that at that time, that was when Trump was in office. He was fine with that. What he is not fine with is Roger Waters also complaining about Joe Biden. That's what this is about. Let's go back in.
Crime. Why won't the United States of America...
sorry. Right about there.
It's a huge crime. Why won't the United States of America encourage Zelensky, the president, to negotiate, obviating the need for this horrendous war that's killing...
You're blaming...
we don't know how many Ukrainians...
But you're blaming the party that got invaded. Come on, you've got it reversed.
That's...
So he's telling Roger Waters here that he has it reversed. I want you to hear again what Roger Waters said to him. This is where the propaganda comes in. Watch this.
Why won't the United States of America encourage Zelensky, the president, to negotiate, obviating the need for this horrendous war that's killing...
You're blaming...
we don't know how many Ukrainians...
But you're blaming the party that got invaded. Come on.
So what he said to him was, why isn't he trying to negotiate to end this? That's what he said. Why isn't Zelensky trying to negotiate to end this? That's what he said. His response is, but you're blaming the party that was invaded. Didn't answer the question, though. Why isn't he trying to do that? Why are we still giving them money? Something to think about.
You've got it reversed.
That's any war, when did it start? What you need to do is look at the history, and you can say, well, it started on this day. You could say it started in 2008. Okay, this war is basically about the action and reaction of NATO pushing right up to the Russian border, which they promised they wouldn't do when Gorbachev negotiated the withdrawal of the USSR from the...
See, Roger knows his history. Oh, CNN, you brought on the wrong guy. He knows his history.
Whole of Eastern Europe.
When you say this, then I have to say, what about our role as liberators? You of all people...
You have no role as liberators.
World War II. World War II. You
got into World War II because...
Come on.
Pearl Harbor. Pearl Harbor. You were completely isolationist until that sad, that devastating,
I would argue we were
day
always going to get in, and that pushed us in. But thank God the United States got in, right? You lost your father in World War II. Thank God the United States.
But thank God the Russians had already won the bloody war almost by then. Don't forget, 23 million Russians died. protecting you and me from the Nazi menace.
Hey, and you would think the Russians would have learned their lesson from war and wouldn't have invaded Ukraine.
Well, you,
Fair?
with all your reading, I would suggest to you, Michael, that you go.
This is really funny to me because I feel like, again, it's just more propaganda.
Protecting you and me from the Nazi menace.
Hey, and you would think the Russians would have learned their lesson from war and wouldn't have.
See how he comes in? See how he swoops in and puts the blame right back on Russia? See, he's not really responding to what Roger Waters is saying. He's not really staying on topic. He comes right back in and puts the blame right back on Russia. That's just more propaganda.
Invaded Ukraine.
Well, you,
Fair?
with all your reading, I would suggest to you, Michael, that you go away and read a bit more and then try and figure out what the United States would do if the Chinese were putting nuclear-armed missiles into Mexico and Canada.
The Chinese are too busy encircling Taiwan as we speak. Okay?
They're not encircling Taiwan. Taiwan is part of China.
Boom. Mic drop, which is true. Do you see the propaganda? This is what CNN, MSNBC, this is what they're doing. Let's try to smear Russia as much as we can. Let's try to now start to smear China. He doesn't even have his facts straight. Come on. You're doing the news and you're not telling people that Taiwan is a part of China? Really? You have to have Roger Waters come on and educate you, boo. You have to have Roger Waters, who's a freaking rock star. He has to come on and educate you about history, and he has to educate you about the news. And you do the news. So much propaganda.
That's been absolutely accepted by the whole of the international community since 1948. And if you don't know that, you're not reading enough. Go and
We're going to hear it again. I'm sorry.
accepted by the whole of the international community since 1948. And if you don't know that, you're not reading enough. Go and read about it.
Okay, did we solve anything?
He told him the truth. Go read. Go learn history. Go read about it.
Well, yeah, we did. Well, I mean, no, we didn't.
I mean,
Because you're believing your propaganda, your side's propaganda.
You're defining it as
Taiwan,
propaganda.
you can't have a conversation about human rights, and you can't have a conversation about Taiwan without actually doing the reading.
Roger, if you're having a conversation about human rights, at the top of the list of offenders are the Chinese. Why is it always the West?
See? Here come the smears again. Top offender, he says, is the Chinese. How's the United States on human rights? Didn't they just overturn Roe v. Wade? And also, I could also add, when it comes to police brutality, how's the United States on human rights?
Still at the top of your list.
Why is it
the
always
Chinese
the Western
didn't
world?
invade Iraq and kill 1 million people in 2003. In fact, as far as I can recall, hang on a minute, who have the Chinese invaded and murdered, slaughtered?
Their own
bollocks.
Okay.
That's absolute nonsense. Complete nonsense.
This guy is such a joke.
Should go away and read, but read some proper
Hey, my
literature.
problem is I spend too much time reading your liner notes, okay? Thank you for doing this.
Thank you.
Let's go back to this part one more time. This is important. Go read.
Oh, yeah,
United
thank you,
States,
but
right?
thank God the Russians had already won the bloody war almost by then. Don't forget, 23 million Russians died protecting you and me from the Nazi menace.
Hey, and you would think the Russians would have learned their lesson from war and wouldn't have invaded Ukraine.
Well, you,
Fair?
with all your reading, I would suggest to you, Michael, that you go away and read a bit more and then try and figure out what the United States would do if the Chinese were putting nuclear-armed missiles into Mexico and Canada.
The Chinese are too busy encircling Taiwan as we speak. Okay?
They're not in.
See, he makes it sound like Taiwan is a separate country, that it's independent of China. It's not. It's a part of China. See how he does that? See how they sneak in the propaganda? If you don't do your research, if you don't study, if you don't know history, it's easy to hear that and just believe it. Thankfully, we have Roger here to save the day.
Circling Taiwan. Taiwan is part of China, and that's been absolutely accepted by the whole of the international community since 1948. And if you don't know that, you're not reading enough. Go and read about it.
Okay. Did we solve anything here today?
No.
Notice he doesn't say anything about Roger saying that Taiwan is a part of China. Doesn't say anything about that. Just moves on.
Well, yeah, we did. Well, I mean, no, we didn't.
I mean,
Nancy, you're believing your propaganda, your side's propaganda.
You're defining it as
Taiwan,
propaganda.
you can't.
Dude, he said you're defining it as propaganda. Well, yeah, it is propaganda because you just lied multiple times in this interview when I didn't play the entire interview. You lied multiple times in this interview. So yes, it is propaganda. You're lying to people and telling them and making them think that Taiwan is separate when it's not.
Have a conversation about human rights, and you can't have a conversation about Taiwan without actually doing the reading.
Roger, if you're having a conversation about human rights, at the top of the list of offenders are the Chinese. Why?
I would say that, again, the United States is at the top of the list when it comes to offenders, and I'll point out a couple examples. Human rights, I mean, don't we put sanctions on people? Have we put sanctions in Afghanistan that cause people to starve? Causing people to starve right now in Afghanistan? What about people starving in Yemen because of the United States government? What about what has happened to people in Haiti because of the United States government? What about what has happened to people in Somalia because of the United States government? So if you really want to talk about someone violating human rights offenses, I think you need to look at the United States government, because we pretty much intervene in so many countries. I showed you the list a couple months ago. Intervene in multiple countries that have caused the people there to suffer. You want to talk about human rights offenses in the same country where we had slavery here for over 400 years, the same country where we had Jim Crow laws, the same country where we locked people up for smoking weed for 20 years, the same country where the politicians are bought and paid for. Give me a break. It's laughable.
Why is it always the Western world?
At the top of your list.
Why is it
the
always
Chinese
the Western
didn't
world?
invade Iraq and kill 1 million people in 2003. In fact, as far as I can recall, hang on a minute, who have the Chinese invaded and murdered?
He's right. Wasn't China that invaded Iraq and killed people?
Slaughtered in
Their own
bollocks.
Okay.
That's absolute nonsense. Complete nonsense. You should go away and read, but read some proper.
Hey, my problem is I spend too much time reading your liner notes, okay? Thank you for doing this.
Thank
I appreciate
you for
it.
talking to me.
All
It's
right.
always a pleasure.
Is it? Okay.
It was a pleasure for Roger because Roger he hit the nail on the head. It was probably not a pleasure for Smirkonish, for Dude. That was spot on. That was spot on. I wish more people would bring him on. I'd like to see him go on Morning Joe and tell them a thing or two. That would be interesting. JB says, I'm a millennial on a fixed income who is on Medicare, but I want everyone to have their prescription costs lowered or free. Well said, JB. Thanks for the super chat here. Jolly B says Z. I don't know what that means, but thank you for the super chat. And I'll take that comment on Rockfin, Eric. When Michael Swarmskanish said, but you are blaming the party that got invaded, this Roger talking to you right now would have answered, well, you blamed Iraq for the U.S. invading them. Why did you make us invade you, Iraq? Then he said, you'd think the Russians would have learned their lesson for war and wouldn't have invaded. This Roger would have asked him, well, have you? Ooh. Mic drop from Roger Meadows and from Roger Waters. 2 mic drops from 2 Rogers tonight. Well said. Well said. All right, guys, it is definitely past my time. I am heading out of here. I'm heading out. Why is Roger Waters not knighted? I know. Roger Waters is what do the kids call it these days? Based. Roger Waters is pretty based, I'd say. He's up there. He's up there. All right, guys. That's it for me tonight. I'll be back tomorrow night, 7 p.m. Eastern time. And I have a lot to talk about tomorrow as well, too. I know I've been talking your ear off. But yes, definitely. Guys, if you're new, make sure you sign up for my newsletter. It's pinned to the top of the chat. That way you get alerts every time I go live. And I don't know why I'm dancing, but I'm just doing it. And I'll be back Thursday and Friday. So you guys know how I do it. But definitely, oh my God, do not applaud this bill. And shout out to Roger Waters because he keeps it real. All right, guys, that's it for me tonight. Have a good night. Keep up the fight.